Okay, we're talking about Churchianity today, and you'll see what we're talking about in just a second. This presentation is called Churchianity because many so-called churches are not Christian and have no idea what it means. In fact, there's good reason to believe they may even be satanic. Most churches are interested in making money and trumpeting the party line. Most churches are actually satanic. They teach half-truths and falsehoods. Isn't that what Satanism is all about, is half-truths and falsehoods? They're more interested in rituals than in what is right or wrong. They're more interested in money. This is taken from 2 Timothy 3, 1-5 and 7. This know also that in the last days perilous times shall come, for men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. From such turn away. And then in verse 7 it says, ever learning and never able to come to a knowledge of the truth. And you know, it's interesting to note, in verse 4 it talks about lovers of pleasures. Well, America's #1 export is entertainment. It sounds like we're a hedonistic society, and it sounds like we're fulfilling this. Anyways, let's keep moving. America was intended to be a Christian nation. U.S. Supreme Court has depictions of the great lawgiver Moses and the Ten Commandments built into the structure. There are U.S. Supreme Court cases that talk about Christianity. This is a Church of the Holy Trinity versus the U.S. Supreme Court. This is a religious people. This is historically true. From the discovery of this continent to the present hour, there is a single voice making this affirmation. These are not individual sayings, declarations of private persons. They are organic utterances. They speak the voice of the entire people. These and many other matters which might be noticed add a volume of unofficial declarations to the mass of organic utterances that this is a Christian nation. The Declaration of Independence says, at the beginning it says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, recognizing the existence of God. The U.S. Constitution preamble talks about we the people do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. And an ordination is a Christian religious ceremony. And Mississippi, Constitution of Mississippi, 1832, sections 4 and 14 of Article 7, it says, quote, no person who denies the being of a god or future state of rewards and punishments shall hold any office in the civil department of this state, religious morality and knowledge being necessary to good government, the preservation of liberty and happiness of mankind, schools and means of education shall forever be encouraged in this state. And it's interesting to note that that was probably one of the first things that the enemy, I guess, for lack of a better word, did was to take God out of the government. Because how can they corrupt the people or the country without doing that first? Article 22 of the Constitution of Delaware, 1776. This is actually an oath of office. I, A.B., do profess faith in God the Father and in Jesus Christ, his only Son, and in the Holy Ghost, one God, blessed forevermore. And I do acknowledge the Holy Scriptures of the Old and New Testament to be given by divine inspiration. This is up to Graff versus Commonwealth. This is a Pennsylvania court case. Christianity, general Christianity, is and always has been a part of the common law of Pennsylvania. Not Christianity with an established church and tithes and spiritual courts, but Christianity with liberty of conscience for all men. Now, and what they're saying, essentially, if you think about it, is that America was intended to be a Christian nation, but there wasn't supposed to be any particular church that's tied to the government. Okay, that's exactly what they're talking about here. They did not want what happened in England, okay, where you had the Church of England and they're defining what's true and what's not true and what's correct and what's not correct, and they're shoving it down everybody's throat. And so, but they did intend America to be a Christian nation. Vidal versus Girard's executors. This is a U.S. Supreme Court case said again. It is also said, and truly, that the Christian religion is a part of the common law of Pennsylvania. This is the Constitution of Illinois, 1870. We, the people of the state of Illinois, grateful to Almighty God for the civil, political, and religious liberty which He has so long permitted us to enjoy, and looking to Him for a blessing upon our endeavors to secure and transmit the same unimpaired to succeeding generations. Well, I think that they probably failed in that. Carlisle versus United States, U.S. Supreme Court again. The rights of sovereignty extend to all persons and things not privileged that are within the territory. They extend to all strangers resident therein, not only to those who are naturalized, but to those who are domiciled therein, having taken up their abode with the intention of permanent residence, but also to those whose residence is transitory. All strangers are under the protection of the sovereign while they are within his territory, and owe a temporary allegiance in return for that protection. And the thing I want to point out in this is that it's talking about strangers, and the phrase strangers, or the word strangers, is taken from the Bible. And it's actually found in a lot of places in the Bible, but one of them is Leviticus 19:34. It says, "But the stranger that dwelleth among you shall be unto you as one born among you, and thou shalt love him as thyself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt." And so that's talking about the two classes of citizens. If you think about it, someone that's born among you and the stranger. And if you think about it, that's how they enslaved the children of Israel, because it's saying right here, you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Because they were strangers, they made them slaves. And so, and that's exactly what they do. What they're doing now to enslave everybody is they're doing the same thing. It's been done for thousands of years. The same stuff just comes around again and again. And we'll talk about that when I go through my presentation on citizenship. Most churches call themselves Christian that aren't. When George Bush Jr. took office, the IRS padlocked the doors of a Southern Baptist temple in Indianapolis, Indiana. And that Southern Baptist temple had tax-exempt 501c3 tax-exempt status. And this is taken from IRS publication 557, which is entitled Tax Exempt Status for Your Organization, and it's found on page 25, and it says, "Churches, although a church is integrated auxiliaries or a convention or association of churches, is not required to file Form 1023 to be exempt from federal income tax or to receive tax-deductible contributions. The organization may find it advantageous to obtain recognition of exemption." And so all churches are automatically tax exempt, and even the IRS knows it and puts it in their publications. So there's nothing saying they have to apply for 501c3 status. When a church makes application for 501c3 status, they cease to be a church and they become a tax exempt organization. That includes a responsible to be careful what you say about the government. That's why the Southern Baptist Temple in Indianapolis was padlocked soon after George Bush Jr. took office. It is called the Johnson Amendment because it was President Johnson that did it. Once a church makes application for 501c3 status, they cease to be a church. A 501c3 church is not a church, but is a tax-exempt organization. A 501c3 tax-exempt organization, they are prohibited from speaking in opposition to the government, and any organization that breaks this rule will be shut down, like the Indianapolis Southern Baptist Temple that was padlocked by George Bush Jr. When he first took office. Now, George Bush Jr. claimed to be a Christian, and yet he's the one that did that. It's really the buck stops there, and you know, he claimed to be a Christian. He was just putting on a big charade for everybody. Any church that has 501c3 status is not Christian because they cannot teach the truth. And Ezekiel 34 verses 2, 8, and 10. It says, "Thus saith the Lord God unto the shepherds, Woe be to the shepherds of Israel that do feed themselves, should not the shepherds feed the flocks? As I live, saith the Lord God, surely because my flock became a prey, and my flock became meat for every beast of the field, because there was no shepherd. Thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I'm against the shepherds, and I will require my flock at their hand." And so all of you people out there who happen to be Christian ministers or claim to be Christian ministers, if you, number one, if you have 501c3 status, either A, you're not Christian, you can't speak all the truth, and if you are speaking the truth, then they're going to shut you down. And so, but you have to consider that my attitude would be, I'd be more worried about what God's going to do than some crook in the government's going to do, and accept those consequences. And next time, set up a church that doesn't have 501c3 status. I mean, it's that simple. That's all you have to do. And so this is one of the things you need to understand, is that there's consequences. There's always consequences. A tax-exempt organization is a person, and that is why they can be shut down if they do not toe the line. The IRS is owned and operated by the International Monetary Fund. The International Monetary Fund is owned by the World Bank. The World Bank is part of the United Nations, and all of these organizations operate under Roman law. The church that has 501c3 status is literally in a contract with the devil. That's literally what it is. And if a tax-exempt organization is not allowed to speak all the truth, then they're only allowed to speak only part of the truth. And part of the truth is a half-truth, and part of the truth is a fraud, and that's what Satan does, okay? Satanists speak false lies and falsehoods and half-truths, and so, matter of fact, the best lie is the one that's almost the truth, but not quite. This is an Arizona court case about fraud. Fraud may be committed by a failure to speak when a duty of speaking is imposed as much as by speaking falsely. Black's Fifth says that fraud is an intentional perversion of the truth for the purpose of inducing another in reliance upon it to part with some valuable thing belonging to him or to surrender a legal right. And, you know, these churches always want to hand around the plate. And so obviously they're wanting people to part with something valuable, aren't they? State versus Coddington, another Arizona case. When one conveys a false impression by disclosure of some facts and the concealment of others, such concealment is in fact a false representation that what is disclosed is the whole truth. God does not respect our fictitious entities. Why would he? You know, I mean, we go and create these fictitious entities. Do you think that we're going to be able to protect ourselves from the consequences of our actions? This is 2 Samuel 14:14. Neither does God respect any person. Deuteronomy 10:17. For the Lord your God is God of gods and Lord of lords, a great God, a mighty and terrible, which regardeth not persons. And Romans 2:11. For there is no respecter of persons with God. And so you have to understand that you're not going to be able to hide by sitting there setting up some corporation so the corporation can violate somebody's rights. You know, God knows who to hold responsible, and it's going to be you. And Judgment Day is coming. Tax-exempt organizations are not allowed to speak about two classes of citizens that have always been here. They're not allowed to speak in opposition to anything that the government does. There are no jails at common law. All jails are private. England, the Archbishop of Canterbury owns all the prisons. Jail is a benefit because common law penalties are very severe. There are people who waive the benefit. A pecuniary cause, okay? Well, if they put you in jail, it's because there was something pecuniary going on, isn't it? Think about it. This is Holthouse, a New Law Dictionary, 1850 edition, such as arise either from withholding ecclesiastical dues or doing or neglecting some act relating to the church whereby some damage accrues to the plaintiff. Okay, so such as, for instance, are the subtraction and withholding of tithes from the parson or the vicar, the non-payment of ecclesiastical dues to the clergy. Okay, so they want their money. And they'll get it, and if they have to put you in jail to get it, that's what they'll do. And this is taken from Book 3 of Blackstone's commentaries. Jails, you know, think about it. You know, it's called penance, penitentiary. Where do you think the word penitentiary comes from? It's a place where you do penance. And penance is a punishment imposed for a crime by the ecclesiastical laws. So anybody that's in jail is in there under ecclesiastical laws. Think about it. It's an acknowledgement of the offense. Penance may be changed into a sum of money. In other words, for your money, we'll forgive you, okay? I mean, this is all, it's just so satanic to be applied to pious uses, okay? So then they can use the money to hire terrorists overseas to make war on you. And this is actually found in Book 3 of the Institutes and the Laws of England, Sir Edward Coke. And so this is what it's all about. It's ecclesiastical law, and jails are all get you in there on ecclesiastical law. This is Jacob A. New Law Dictionary. This is talking about penalty of bonds. If a man brings an action of debt upon a bond for performance of covenants, the plaintiff shall recover the whole penalty of his bond, because in debt the judgment must be according to the demand. Okay, and so this is what they do: is they create a fictitious debt. And then they turn you over to the jailer so they can get their money, and that's exactly what's going on. And it's all based on a fictitious entity. And if you watch my other videos about corruption in the courts and fire the judicial whores in Canada, you know, it goes through and explains about this fictitious entity, and the one about quasi-contracts, okay? That's exactly what they're doing, is they need this fictitious entity to get you into a contract so they can put you in jail and get their royalty. And that's what it's all about. That's taken from Jacob A. New Law Dictionary, 1750 edition. Penitentiary, penitent, an ordainer of penances, and a place for penitence. Okay, so that's Anderson's Law Dictionary, 1889. So a penitentiary is a place for penitence. So you got to go and repent in the penitentiary. And originally in colonial days, the schools were set up so that children could be taught to read so they could read the Bible. Because the government is bankrupt, it's now owned and operated by the Vatican, and that is why they've removed the Bible from the schools and from the courts, because the Vatican is satanic, has nothing to do with Christianity. A tax-exempt organization is a satanic Luciferian organization. It teaches half-truths, teaches lies. It does not teach the truth. The government's went bankrupt at least 3 times and is now owned and operated by our enemies. This is Article 11 of the Treaty with Tripoli, the 4th of November, 1796. Okay, so this has been going on from the beginning of time. Well, not the begin, right from the beginning, not necessarily probably from the beginning of time, but at least from when the Declaration of Independence and all that stuff, and it's all just started. It's going on before then too. As the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion, is the part I want to point out there. And then they're talking about the Muslim, okay, which is Muslims, and the Tripoli is where Libya, the capital city of Libya, and so that was in 1796. And so let's talk about the World Council of Churches. And so the World Council of Churches brings together 349 churches, denominations, and church fellowships in more than 110 countries and territories throughout the world, representing over 560 million Christians, and including most of the world's Orthodox churches, scores of Anglican, Baptist, Lutheran, Methodist, and Reformed churches, as well as many United and Independent churches, while the bulk of the WCC's founding churches were European and North American. Today, most member churches are in Africa, Asia, Caribbean, Latin America, and the Middle East, and the Pacific. And that's taken from the World Council of Churches website. There's their website right there. And the World Council of Churches comes from the Vatican. According to Wikipedia, the WCC was created in 1948 when the Faith and Order movement and the Life and Work movement organizations were merged, and the Vatican was part of it. And the Faith and Order movement order enjoys the full membership and participation of several other churches who are not members of the World Council of Churches, and among them is the Roman Catholic Church. So the Roman Catholic Church enjoys full membership and participation, but it's not a member. So they don't want to be seen as being a member because they're, that's right, they're satanic. They're trying to deceive people. I have many wonderful friends who happen to be Catholic, and the history is full of examples of the Vatican exterminating whole communities for heresy. And I just want to make sure that this presentation should not be taken to reflect anything negative on anyone who happens to be Catholic. And many of them are the ones that are feeding me this information, quite frankly. And so this is Article 10 of the 1933 Concordat with the Vatican. The wearing of clerical dress or religious habit by lay people is liable to the same penalty by the state as the misuse of the military uniform. And this is the treaty that Hitler signed with the Vatican at the time. And it's interesting to note that the United States has bought into this treaty, and so has Canada, and most countries around the world have bought into this treaty. And this is the Lateran Pact. And the Lateran Pact is a pact that was signed with Mussolini and the Vatican. And it said, this Article 4 says the sovereignty and exclusive jurisdiction over Vatican City, which Italy recognizes as pertaining to the Holy See, forbid any intervention therein on the part of the Italian government, or that any authority other than that of the Holy See shall be there acknowledged. And so what they're saying is that Vatican is a sovereign nation, is a sovereign country, and as a matter of fact, in most places nowadays, they even have someone that goes to the UN, and so a UN ambassador, I guess you'd call it. But so the point is that the Vatican, Mussolini and Italy went and did this Lateran Pact with the Vatican, and Canada and the United States and a whole bunch of countries have signed on to this Lateran Pact. And because of the bankruptcy, the government is owned and operated by Satan, and they've taken prayer out of the schools, they've taken God out of the schools, they've taken God out of the courts. There's Christian churches out there, but they're not tax-exempt organization, and that excludes 99% of the so-called churches out there. And this is talking about the bent crucifix. The bent crucifix is a sinister symbol used by Satanists in the 6th century that had been revived at the time of Vatican II. This was a bent or broken cross on which displayed a repulsive, distorted figure of the Messiah, which the black magicians and sorcerers of the Middle Age made use of to represent the biblical term mark of the beast. And so it's talking about the Antichrist is what it's talking about. Yet not only Paul VI, but his successors, Jude John Paul's, carried that object and held it up to be revered by crowds who had not the slightest idea that it stood for this false Messiah. And on page 56 of Contempt prints a picture of the current Pope John Paul II holding this bent and broken cross, just as we've shown at that website, and this is actually the picture. And so that's what the bent cross looks like, and here he's standing up there saying that he's basically the Antichrist. So, a citation, a summons to appear, applied particularly to process in spiritual court. The ecclesiastical court proceed according to the course of civil and canon laws. Remember in the Roman civil law presentation, it says that civil law and Roman law and Roman civil law and municipal law are all interchangeable phrases. And so now it's talking about civil and canon laws by citation and libel. Okay, so citation and libel. Libel is Admiralty. Citation is still Admiralty. It's both the same basically thing. And this is taken from Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition. This is Jacob A. New Law Dictionary, 1750. A summons, a citation is a summons to appear, applied particularly in process to spiritual court. Ecclesiastical courts proceeding according to the course of the civil and canon laws by citation and libel. Okay, so again, this is all coming from the Vatican. And the citation, this is Black's Law Dictionary, 2nd edition. This is in the name of the process used in the English ecclesiastical probate and divorce courts. Citation, this is Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1897 edition. The act in which a person is so summoned or cited in the ecclesiastical law. The citation is the beginning and the foundation of the whole cause. The process issued in courts of probate and admiralty. Its original process of proceeding were used as and is in that respect analogous to the writ of capias, or a summons at law. And so a citation, a writ of capias, that's what they do in Texas, that they issue a warrant. It's actually not a warrant, it's a capias. And Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1897 edition. And this is actually, I filed some lawsuits here in Texas, and this is a sanitized citation that they did. When I went and filed a lawsuit, I had to take it down, and I want to effect service, and so the clerk actually makes up these citations. And as you can see, they criminally converted my name and address and everything. And but if you look at the red arrow up at the top, you'll see that it says citation, and it's in Texas. Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835, Volume 1. Ecclesiastical courts. Ecclesiastical are those courts which are held by the king's authority as supreme governor of the church for matters which chiefly concern religion. And the laws and constitution whereby the Church of England's governed, and so the jurisdiction of these courts is voluntary. Okay, you don't have to go there. It's voluntary. They just drag you in and say you have volunteered. Courts ecclesiastical, the proceedings in ecclesiastical courts is according to the civil and canon law by citation, libel. Okay, it's all admiralty. It's all contracts. And they just drag you in there and say that you got you in a contract. They play the little games. This is all related to the corruption in the courts, and videos that I've already done, because that's what they're imposing is canon law. This is all ecclesiastical. It's all coming from the Vatican. And look at this. At the end it says that if the sentence is disliked by appeal. Okay, so the appeals courts, it's the same thing. Okay, that's why they set up these appeal courts, because they got to satisfy the Vatican. Courts ecclesiastical, the civil and canon laws were first imported into England. It says the Great Court of Appeal in all ecclesiastical cause to the Privy Council in the 16th century of King Stephen. In the same period that the civil and canon laws were first imported into England. But in a few years after, to obviate this growing practice, the constitutions made by Clarendon, these are now the principal courts of ecclesiastical jurisdiction, none of which are allowed to be courts of record. So it's a kangaroo court. It's nothing to do with common law. Absolutely nothing to do with common law. It's admiralty. Administrator. Person authorized to manage and distribute the estate of an intestate or a testator who has no executor. In English law, administrators are officers of the ordinary. The ordinary is actually an ecclesiastical court. And so then if you look down at the bottom there, it says required the ordinary, these statutes required the ordinary to appoint next of kin by relations by blood of the deceased. And so Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1883 edition, page 119. So again, that's what an administrator is. It's all ecclesiastical, it's all Admiralty, and that's exactly what it is. Articulus, Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835, and articulus is an article or complaint exhibited by way of libel. Okay, so again, this is all talking about Admiralty law. Okay, summoners, petty officers that cite or warn men to appear in court. And the summontories were properly the apparitors who warned in delinquents at a certain time and place to answer any charge or complaint exhibited against them, and in citations from a superior court. Okay, so there's that word citations. Okay, so summons is basically the same thing. Okay, so that's Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition. A libel is Admiralty practice to proceed against by filing a libel to seize under Admiralty process at the commencement of a suit. Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. Excommunication, an ecclesiastical censure. And this is Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 1. And it kind of goes into the different kinds of excommunication there. Another excommunications dictionary. An excommunicated person was disabled from doing any act. He could not serve upon juries or be a witness in any court. Okay, so that sounds like all that stuff was Admiralty. Nor bring an action, either real or personal, to recover lands or money due him. The votes of persons excommunicated have been frequently objected to at elections. So this is why, if you think about it, this is why the people that founded America wanted nothing to do with the Church of England, because it was so integral to the state that the church could, they would say it's voluntary to go into their kangaroo court, but if you didn't, then they'd just excommunicate you and you couldn't participate, you couldn't do anything. And then they just walk all over you. As a matter of fact, if you go down to the bottom here, in some cases, persons incurred excommunication ipso facto by act of Parliament, and but they were first to be convicted of the offence by law, and the conviction transmitted to the ordinary. And then what it says is that some of these other definitions, you'll see some of the stuff they used to do. And this is actually Black's Jacob A. New Law Dictionary, 1750. And ecclesiastical excommunication is an ecclesiastical censure by which a person is excluded from communion with the church and from the company of the faithful. And so, and then if you go on, excommunication, and this is where it talks about it. This is Jacob A. New Law Dictionary. Excommunication is generally for contempt and not appearing to obey, and not, so they say it's voluntary. But if you don't appear, then they excommunicate you. And this is where they talk about it, where refusing to read the sacrament, heresy, or to come to church. And then it says down here at the bottom, it says, thereupon the party may be taken and imprisoned by virtue of the writ significant, or capias. Okay, the capias, that's what they do in Texas. Excommunication is to remain in prison until he submits. Okay, so they say it's voluntary, but then they drag you down to their prison, and they put you in their prison until you volunteer. And so, you know, these people are just the lowest form of life this is. This is coming from the Vatican. This is exactly where it's coming from, and this is the kind of stuff they do. Court of the Ordinary is in American law. A court has jurisdiction of probate wills and the regulation and management of decedents and estates. And it says such courts exist in Georgia, New Jersey, North Carolina, and Texas. I don't know of any in Texas, although all Texas courts use citations, so maybe they're all ordinary. Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1856 edition. Imposters. Those who falsely pretend an extraordinary commission from heaven and terrify and abuse the people with false denunciations. Obviously, they had problems. Like these ecclesiastical courts, you know, sit there and do all this stuff. And so, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, the judge, and like in my case, for example, was an imposter. He was a clerk masquerading as a judge, and that's what this is talking about. Another Williams Law Dictionary, 1816 edition, talking about imposters again. And this is Burney New Law Dictionary, talking about imposters. And this is Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition, talking about imposters. One who pretends to be someone else to deceive others, especially to receive the benefits of a negotiable instrument. So these clerks that are masquerading as a judge, they get paid with a negotiable instrument. Think about it. That's exactly what they do. Inquisition is one way of proceeding in the ecclesiastical court, and that's exactly what all of these cases are nowadays, is an inquisition. And you're guilty until proven innocent. It's a kangaroo court. It has nothing to do with justice, and that's Jacob A. New Law Dictionary. This is Jacob A. New Law Dictionary, a libel and spiritual court. If upon a libel, any ecclesiastical matter, the defendant make a surmise to have a prohibition, and such surmise to be insufficient, the other party may show it to the court, and judges will discharge it. The libel is used in ecclesiastical proceedings, okay? A libel is used in ecclesiastical and Admiralty, okay? Admiralty is an ecclesiastical proceeding, and that's what you need to understand. The libel practice. A libel is defined to be the plaintiff's petition or allegation made and exhibited in the judicial process with some solemnity of law. It is also said to be a short and well-ordered writing, setting forth in clear manner as well to the judge as to the defendant, the plaintiff's or accuser's intention and judgment. It is a written statement by a plaintiff as his cause of action of relief he seeks to obtain in suit. And that's taken from laws, ecclesiastical law. And so, again, a libel is done, Admiralty is ecclesiastical law. It's all by contract. You have to consent. And that's taken from Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1856 edition. Mark Passio is a former Satanist priest, has some great YouTube videos about natural law, and one of the things he says in those YouTube videos is all the atrocities in history were committed by order takers. And if you think about it, he's 100% right. It's people that are too stupid to know what a lawful command is or not, and they just follow orders. Anyways, in Mark Passio's natural law videos, he talks about, he's a former Satanist priest, he talks about the pillars of Satanism and its forms of mind control, and he says survival is the highest law of Satanism. Moral relativism, there's no such thing as right or wrong, we just make up what's right or wrong. Social Darwinism, certain classes of society think they're most fit to rule, postulates the survival of the most socially ruthless, ultimate responsibility is for self-preservation. And remember, I was talking about how Satanism is half-truths and falsehoods, okay? And so moral relativism falls into that. There's no such thing as right and wrong, we just make it up. And so they can sit there and just make it up as they go along. Pillars of Satanism, forms of mind control, eugenics, elite get to determine who lives or dies. Order followers responsible for all the atrocities in history, just follow orders without thinking about whether it's a lawful order or not. They're willing slaves. Moral relativism, 2/3 of the people believe in moral relativism. Truth is relative. Truth today is different than it was yesterday, and it's going to be different tomorrow. And so again, that sounds like half-truths and lies. An order taker is someone who is too stupid to know when they are receiving an unlawful command or not, cannot think for themselves, but needs someone to tell them what to do, as described by Mark Passio in his YouTube videos on natural law. Mark Passio rightly says that all atrocities in history were committed by order takers in his YouTube profile, and that's his YouTube profile. I highly recommend you go there. He's got some great material. World War II, War Crimes Tribunals, all of the Nazis claimed they were just following orders, and they either suffered death by hanging or spent the rest of their life in jail. Some of them are still hunted to this day. In Vietnam, there was a My Lai massacre, and the U.S. soldiers got convicted of murder for that. The Amistad's another good example. That's a case of a slave ship before the Civil War. There was a slave ship that the slaves went and were able to take over the ship, and they killed all of the people on the ship except for one, and they said, take us back to Africa. They didn't know how to sail. And so the guy that they didn't kill, he sailed in circles off the coast of Virginia until the U.S. Navy found him, and then they took him to the U.S. and put him on trial for murder. And what happened is there was two arguments. The first argument was that either they're slaves. If they're slaves, they're property. They're no different than a dog or a cat, and a dog or a cat can't commit murder. And the other argument was that they're free men and they had every right to do it. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court. The government tried to manipulate the results of the hearing as much as they could, but back then they had some decent judges, and so it all went all the way to the Supreme Court, and ultimately the Supreme Court said that they're free men. They had every right to do what they did, and they sent them back to Africa. And so that's you know, a good example of order takers that are too stupid. You know, the order takers was the people that enslaved them. Anyways, so this is part of my Fire the Whores campaign, and the reason I'm talking about this stuff is because all of this stuff is coming from the Vatican, and we need to understand that. And these judicial whores intend that we're talking about order takers now, these judicial whores intend that they're brain-dead, idiot, low-intelligent, hired thugs assault us and kidnap us and falsely imprison us because it's so good for business. And this is, the courts are all owned and operated by the Vatican, so it's a satanic religious ceremony. And if anyone has any doubt about that, check out Jordan versus City of New London, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit, case 99-918A. And what you'll find out is that Jordan was a guy that had a master's degree, and he wanted to get a job with the City of New London Police Department, and they refused to hire him because he scored too high on the test. And so and he sued him, and it went all the way to the Second Court of Appeals in New York. And the court said, well, it's not a good idea, but they have that right to do that. So basically, the court wanted to encourage these cities to hire low intelligence thugs so that they could be the ones to commit these atrocities. The only way we'll ever get any real justice is to demand our own common law juries or our peers, and we need to know what that is. A true common law jury does not take instructions from the judge. A true common law jury calls the witnesses, questions the witnesses, determines the law and the facts of the matter, and they can ignore any statute or law. It's called jury nullification. Look it up. It's as old as time itself. A true common law jury will pronounce sentence, if any. A true common law jury is not subject to appeal. Upcoming events: color of law, fire of the United Nations judicial whores in Texas, City of Fort Worth pigs, City of Grand Prairie pigs, how to do a habeas corpus, citizenship, fire of the United Nations whores in America. Copies of these documents can be found in my private group at Yahoo called Administrating-Your-Public-Servants. I've got YouTube videos that are videos of private information shares that show these and other court citations. My YouTube profile, Sovereign Living, and you can send me an email for other copies of documents. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to my little rant today, and I hope you've got something out of it. And what I would like to see is some people with some real Christian churches, because it was the War of Independence was because of the Christian churches that were around then, and they basically neutered us because of this Johnson Amendment, and so we need to start something going here. So anyways, I appreciate you taking the time to listen, and I hope you have a real nice day.